So hopefully these get easier as we go along. Thank you all for coming. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Tiffany Hamilton. I am the mayor of Hudson, and this is the first committee meeting of the local planning committee for the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. If you're not familiar with that or not terribly familiar with that, you'll get a great opportunity to learn more tonight, as will everyone on the committee. But it is a $10 million grant given to Hudson for economic development, focused on the Bridge District and making living, working, and recreating in the district more accessible and more appealing to everyone in the community, visitors and residents. So I'm not going to take a whole lot of time talking because we're going to get through a lot of content in the next hour and 50 minutes. There is a public comment session that is designated at the very end of the meeting, the last 15 minutes. So I ask that you hold your comments until then, and then the full public engagement process will begin next Thursday night in the same place at 6 p.m. So thank you all for coming, and I will turn this over to Steve.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And again, I'm Steve Carney. I'm with Stantec Consulting Services. I'll explain a little bit more about us when we're all going through the introductions and talking to everyone. Just a couple items for anyone who I didn't quickly speak to. We have just maps of the study area, and then on the back, there's a place to write down comments, questions, what you think is important, etc. Again, as the mayor said, there'll be a public comment period at the end. This is a way to get some thoughts out during the meeting, and then also, and I will say, they're for us, valuable information for us. Again, and I'll mention it, there is a public meeting coming up next week, but thank you for coming to this one too. It's just so great to have so many people participating within this. Real quickly, we're about to go around and do introductions to the Planning Committee. This meeting is, will be an overview of the DRI, the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. We're going to talk about the vision, the ideas, the application, and we're going to talk about how we're engaging the community, and we want to hear about how we're going to engage the community. And then it becomes a committee discussion. I mean, that is the first major piece to this, and as we are starting, this is a listening session for us. And again, at the very beginning, we're going to be doing a lot of listening, learning, understanding opportunities, issues, what is feasible, what is possible, and that is the first phase of this in the next month. So again, I just want to emphasize that we're learning tonight, learning about the opportunities and everything. We'll talk about the next steps, and then again, we will have the public comment towards the end. What I'd like to do first, since this is the local planning committee meeting number 1, is to have each of the members introduce themselves, their affiliation, and if there's anything small, important, relevant to the Bridge District, this area, that would be fine too. But brief is the name of the game for this one. And just because, Antonio, you're right here, I will start here.
Antonio Abitabo, I'm the principal at Hudson High School and the Hudson City School District.
Kim Bach, owner of Verdigris Tea on 2nd and Warren, and yes.
Shahin DeJesus, I'm a student at Columbia Green.
Todd Erling, I'm the Executive Director of Hudson Valley Agribusiness, and I'm a member of the Capital Region Economic Development Committee.
I'm Betsy Graham-Com, Executive Director of the Columbia Green Hospital Foundation. I'm Michelle Hughes with the National Young Farmers Coalition.
Tony Jones, I'm the board chair of Columbia Economic Development Corporation.
I'm Joan Hunt with the Greater Hudson Promise Neighborhood.
Jeffrey Hunt, President and CEO of the Columbia County Chamber of Commerce.
Peter Young, business owner at 512 Warren Street and a former planning board member in the city of Hudson, board member at Awana, board member at the Opera House, and happy to be here.
John Riley, I'm the chairman of the Board of Supervisors Economic Development Committee.
Christian, I work for the City of Hudson Department of Public Works.
Bob Lucky, owner of the Cascades Restaurant on Warren Street.
Randall Martin, Commissioner of Hudson Housing Authority.
Elena Mosley, Operation Unite Education and Cultural Arts Center.
Seth Rapport, local resident, Board and Brand, owner of a local business here in town, resident of Hudson.
I'm Jabin Ahmed, and I'm a resident of Hudson. I'm Michael Sadowski. I'm Executive Director of Bard Early College Hudson, which is a new satellite campus of Bard College right on Orange Street.
I'm Christine Vanderland, Community Projects Manager with the Columbia Land Conservancy.
I'm Dan Stewart, John Doe Books and Records.
Colin Stair, Stair Galleries.
Great, thank you. I could honestly say I've been involved with 3 of these from the first round, 3 DRIs, and this is likely the largest group that we have come across. I'm looking at Sarah. But that's fantastic. The more we have, the more input we get, and the closer we get to making sure we reach the priorities from the community. Now again, so you actually do have jobs here, and this is critical. I want to talk about each of the steps. Really from our perspective, you become, you're the voice that we're hearing more. You're going to help us prioritize these projects. You represent the community, and so when we're talking about ideas, we'll present them to you first, and then you're essentially telling us that's a bad idea, or that you should think about this, but have you considered this, or you've completely spelled the name wrong, which I probably have done in this presentation. I always say I'm sorry right up front for this first round. Again, it is very helpful and important for us. We have a vision. We're going to talk about that shortly. But again, we need your insights, and we need you as we evolve this, and as we get closer, your roles become all the more important as we make some of these final decisions, because this DRI and the $10 million implementation funding that gets this project going right from the start is a rare opportunity for all of these cities in upstate New York. It's an incredible program, and just to see that implementation. So again, really, you'll ultimately be responsible. You will be the ones who bring the DRI, the plan forward in the community, and many of you will be involved in different implementation efforts going forward. New York State planners, I was going to ask Sarah Crowell, who's been involved in this, just to talk quickly about the role of the planners, the partner state, who we work closely with throughout this effort, and again, just real quick.
Very quick. Hi, I'm Sarah Crowell. I am I'm the Director of the Office of Planning, Development, and Community Infrastructure at the Department of State. For this purpose, on this program, I'm overseeing this program statewide. The Department of State is overseeing the DRI. We are working with the communities. We have staff, and I'll let everybody introduce themselves, but we have staff who are going to support the consultant. We work with, we employ the consultants, we're supporting the community, and we are here with our other agency partners to help you.
Hi, I'm Crystal Loeffler. I work for New York State Homes and Community Renewal. I'm the director of a program called the New York Main Street Program, so that's how I become involved once the projects are awarded, generally renovation projects in downtown. My colleague Darren Scott is also.
It's kind of misleading. I'll just throw my voice. I'm a coach, soccer coach, I'll just hold it off to the side. I'm Jamie Ethier. I'm also going to be the lead planner with Department of State. So Sarah's director of the program. I'll be the point person working with the City of Hudson on this planning effort as we move forward, along with Steve Kearney and the teams.
John Winbush, Department of State, working with these two folks here as well. Specialize in the capital region and a couple of other regions, but yeah, we with Sarah and Jamie here.
Thank you very much. We've got one more.
Good evening, I'm Mike Kebley. I'm the Regional Director for Empire State Development.
Thank you. And again, like I said, this is the beginning, everyone getting to know each other. Now there's our team, Stantec Urban Places Group. We work across the country. I'm located in Boston. I've got a history of upstate New York, Syracuse is where I started my career. But again, our group, we work, primarily, well, at all different levels, public and private sector, redevelopment initiatives, revitalization initiatives, both in urban sectors and suburban areas that are quickly becoming more urbanized. And again, we've worked, as I said, on 3 of these projects in the first round, Oswego, Elmira, and Oneonta. And, what I wanted to say right here, and sort of our lessons learned, and we'll get into this as we start the discussion, But, this is the second round, so everyone has learned quite a bit from the first round. The fact of the matter is, we're really going to be focused on implementation. And we saw that with the projects that ended up getting prioritized. Particularly, I was involved leading the initiative in Oswego. It was where, property owners, business owners, developers, banks, entities could come together and develop a project that, with the assistance of the DRI funding, not only could get off the ground in short order, but was in a location that could leverage and create future opportunities. And that's how projects began to become prioritized. So I just want everyone, on the planning committee and the community here, to think about, the DRI in that respect, and what the opportunities and what the catalytic redevelopment or catalytic events that occur around a project that is funded. Now, we obviously can't do it alone. I should have said, we're the urban planners, we are the urban designers, and I'll stop with all of the introductions, but Phil Chafing's in the room here somewhere. He's our lead urban designer, and as I said, the fact with this one, and Phil may speak to it during the discussion point, and hopefully he does, the urban design, the green space, all in the public sector, public realm, transportation, all of that we can at least see is going to be critical here. Also, in starting out, this is a market-based approach in many ways. We have 3 different market analysts on the team, each helping us understand a different component of it. WZHA, Sarah Woodward, she is helping us make sure that development initiatives in the application and other ones that may come forward, that the numbers effectively work, or if there's a gap, what is that gap? What is the right amount to make this project happen? But for she looks at all of these initiatives, as from a private development perspective, which is very helpful to us. Larissa Ortiz, she's a retail specialist, and again, when you talk about, she is more of the Main Street urban environment, but also, different areas have different retail solutions, opportunities, and I think on this one, she's going to play a vital role. And Mark Norman, I should say, is our affordable housing. We've worked with him on a number of projects, and he helps us understand not only, essentially I should say, all levels of affordable housing, all the way through workforce, in areas where there's not currently, typically funding for types of affordable housing. There's ways to create strategies through, either mixed income, mixed development, so you get all levels of affordable. He has been very creative, and I think, again, everyone will play an important role on this one. WZVA, Zimmerman Voc Associates, should have been on that piece too. She is our residential market analyst, and she will help us understand essentially what the future markets for residential are, what type of housing individuals are looking for, and the price points that they are willing to pay and able to pay. And again, while Mark will be focused on some of the affordable, Lori will really help us understand the potential for, and that becomes very critical because those rents identify how you would structure a finance project with these. So again, we need each of those pieces. And then we get into some of the zoning with EDR out of Syracuse, Floyd Albert, civil engineering, making sure that everything that we're looking at is possible. And then Middleton Construction, helping us understand, again, further cost estimates for these projects. So again, this is a very large team because we are essentially focused on the implementation piece. We have to understand all of these sides to it. So, our responsibility, we prepare, we staff, we make sure we've got everything ready for this, all the materials for the community. We do the community engagement. I'll speak to that. That's a very important part of this. And again, as I just said, we research, we figure out the feasibility, and then we develop ultimately all of the program elements, the plan document itself, and of course the implementation strategies, and really make sure that everything is in the right order, the priority, all of that. We combine, create the plan document at the end. And again, that's really Stantec. We pull all of our sub-consultants' work together, all of the appendices, etc. Okay, now let's talk about the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. In the community, I would just like a raise of hands. How many of you are familiar, very familiar with the DRI program? Okay, so not that many. Well, again, as I said, I've worked in a number of states. I've never seen a program like this, and I imagine more of them will come. The $100 million across 10 cities is an incredible opportunity because of what that $10 million can leverage. In Oswego, that $10 million in the plan leveraged about $80 to $90 million, much of that private investment going into these initiatives. So again, when you think about what a $10 million, it's much larger for each community. But again, it's a strategic investment plan, an action strategy for a downtown or a downtown area. Again, this is the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. We're talking about the Bridge District, and again, it is a destination, a downtown environment, and that's what we are looking at. But again, it's how can these projects leverage public and private investment. And again, it's going to build on a successful DRI application. This work has already been done, and Sheena, I am not following my own agenda that I should have right in front of me. And what would you actually like to just speak quickly about putting together this application? Because we already mentioned that.
I mean, for folks who didn't raise their hands, if there were a lot of you, that's understandable because it was a quick process. So my name is Sheena Salvino. I'm the director at Hudson Development Corporation.
Am I projecting enough?
That's great.
Thank you so much, Hudson, because we actually won, and this is an awesome occasion to be at, so I'm thrilled. I hope you all are too. So the application process was a quick one. We were announced in May that the governor was going to do a round 2 of this initiative. We got our ducks in a row. The mayor and I talked. We said, can we do this? Yes, we can. Here we are. Let's ask the council for some cash. And then our partners at CEDC stepped in and said, we'll match your cash. If you guys want to go at it, we're going to do it. So we did it. We went at it. It was 4.5 weeks of public meetings, stakeholder meetings, wherever we could get some input, we got some input, and then we had to cut it off. It wasn't the most elaborate public sessions that we could have, but we did the best we could with what we had, and in 2.5 weeks we got as much input. 7 meetings later, stakeholder meetings, individual ones, public ones, as much information as we could get, we dumped into an application. We created a narrative working with River Architects and their consultant Mirador to put together a narrative that hit on the 8 criteria that were outlined in the governor's initiative. We put that together, and then, bam, came up with a narrative, submitted it at the end of July, mid-July. I think we had about 5.5 weeks to put it together. So by mid-July, we had the application submitted, and then we were called and said, hey, why don't you come up for an interview? The mayor, myself, and a couple of business owners and supporters came up, answered questions about what the investment strategy might look like and what projects were ready to go, which were in the works, and what we wanted to see happen in the future that would leverage future investment, and we did that, answered all of our questions perfectly, and then we came back, and lo and behold, we got the announcement on August 1st that we were a winner. Fantastic, congratulations, Hudson, we're all very excited about it, and here we are today. Love you wonderful local planning representatives and our new team with Stantec and the state representatives, so thank you all very much, and does that sum it up?
Absolutely, there's no way I was going to be able to do that, so thank you, Sheena. And again, this is a highly competitive program, so I mean, this is something to be very proud of, and I also, to Sheena's point, it was a lot of work to get this going, and now we have a lot of work to get this finished. You'll see the schedule on a future slide. So again, what goes into the DRI plan? The downtown vision, Bridge District vision. We're going to talk about that tonight. As Department of State has learned, as we've been talked, as we go into this round 2, there's been a lot of visioning work, and we want to go through this quickly. So we're even going to take tonight as an opportunity to talk about the vision that went into the application. But we will establish one. We'll establish it quickly after the first public meeting. From that vision, we'll develop the goals, and then, in fairly short order, as we begin to identify the priority projects, the strategies on how this implementation occurs will be developed for each of these. And then again, as I said, the clear vision for the plan, the goals and the strategies, the action plan that I've spoken about, a timeline, all of the individuals, organizations, entities, funding sources that will make these projects, initiatives happen. All of that gets identified in the implementation component of this. And again, it'll be a focus on, as we've talked about, these catalytic projects. be it a mixed-use development or a green space opportunity that through that investment in the green space leverages new opportunities for development in and around that. All of those become the components of the investment plan. So now let's talk about the DRI boundary, the Bridge District. And again, as we look at this, you've got obviously the Hudson River. On the east, we've got 2nd Street. Everyone should have a map in front of them. And Dock Street on the north, and then of course the protected wetland on the south. These, from the application, and we will build from the work already done that Sheena just spoke about. But again, here are the strengths of the Bridge District. A compact, well-defined boundaries with an evolving, diverse population, potential to build on and increase public and private investment, measurable recent and impending job growth. I probably have not emphasized job growth enough, and let's talk about that and get into it during the discussion, but that is a huge component of the DRI, and I know just having reviewed the application, it's a major part of this application. For the characteristics that once enhance increased livability, local policies that advance revitalization, and the strong demonstrated community support. And now we get to the vision. And I will read the vision, and then I want to take a pause at this point because I've been talking enough. And this is going to be the first opportunity for the planning committee to just talk about the vision, and I would like to get your input. But from the community's perspective, we're going to do this next week across the entire community so that we can shape this. But again, as this is the planning committee meeting, I want to get some insights onto this, and if there's anything within this that possibly might be commented on, and your input will be presented next week on a slide after this vision as to what came up at this meeting so that the community can see that as well, without changing anything until the community has their input on this. But again, just in case anyone can't read that, and I'm much closer, increased development of mixed-use projects that incorporate affordable and market-rate housing and transportation-oriented design. Workforce development and reimagining the waterfront for expanded public use and enjoyment. While tourism is a seasonal surge economy for the Hudson, the DRI application proposes to create an environment for high-quality, year-round, living-wage jobs. And luckily I have Phil in the background who is taking notes, so I don't need to, and this will all be summarized in the meeting notes. But I'd like to take a pause right now for anyone on the planning committee who has any comments about the vision, thoughts about it, any areas, keywords that we might be missing within this, or other parts to it that maybe doesn't ring right, or anything. Any comments? First person to raise your hand, you'll get the microphone. Anyone daring, or is it just perfect? Oh, okay. Hold on. Peter.
Yeah, Peter Young. First question I would ask is, I went online and found an article about the outcome of the Glens Falls DRI grant, and they make reference to a second round of funding there, and I don't know that I've seen anything about that yet. I'm curious to know, is there in fact another round of funding that we could apply for after this process?
I will try to answer that and see if I get it correct. When we, just as the question, and then we're going to get into the vision, that in terms of as we develop a plan, we prioritize, we're done, we complete this planning effort with a list of the priority projects. Those priority projects are then reviewed by the Department of State and the team, and then the announcements are made through these projects. And so more come as this begins. But it's not, not right at the end of this is the funding released. It is by project, it's been prioritized by the community. And that's how the DRI funding will come into the community. And hopefully I did an okay job. Does anyone want to? Yep, we'll just have Jamie. Because again, these are important. I mean, this is the first.
I'm just going to throw. So in
soccer.
regards to the funding, in addition to any of the projects that we funded under the allocation for this of $10 million, we're looking for anywhere from $10 to $15 million worth of projects to be identified in the plan. Because this plan will be used to, for the city to take forward to the CFA, the Consolidated Funding Application, for other agencies to fund, for grant opportunities, for federal funding, a variety of other opportunities that exist out there. So this project, or this plan, will identify a variety of projects for other funding in addition to downtown revitalization. So,
Sure, and we are going to have a discussion phase, so, but
Jeff Hunt, this seems, from the chamber, this seems to sort of follow a model from the, maybe dating myself, from the empowerment zone days, where you're leveraging the state funds, federal and other funds. So the funding is $10 million from the state, but you're looking to leverage money from other sources to complete the projects that are identified, correct?
Correct, absolutely. And that's a very good point. We're looking for other funds to leverage this, state, federal, and private funds.
Can you clarify where you have Can you just clarify where you have in the vision statement and transportation-oriented design?
Transportation-oriented design, something that you'll see, and there's transit. Let me just get into this. Transportation-oriented design. There's also TOD, transit-oriented development. And, but that's both, again, we're talking about within the Bridge District, the train station. Third highest number of, people coming off the stop. That, and then opportunities for development right in that area. That would be the transit-oriented development. It's one of the priority items in their DRI with projects. But also when you think about the streetscape and the public realm down in that area, the design component of that, the connections, and they all fall within the realm of transportation. How do you walk from Warren Street or other areas to the park? How do you access it with trains coming through, with trucks coming through, with all of the lack of sidewalks in some areas down there? That design, and as I mentioned, that is going to be critical to this. I mean, without having just starting, but on our initial tours, we've just seen that. And then we're allowed one more, but it's important.
I'll try to make this important then.
As long as it's connected to the vision, right?
Yes, this is connected to the vision. So what you're telling us is $10 million seems like a big check, but it's really a very small amount of money in terms of what the vision is. So we have a very small bag of seeds that we're trying to sow correctly here. In your experience in the last 3 projects you've worked on, was there any kind of accepted ratios that you went to private developers or investors with to say, here's our seed, we expect you to do 80%, 70%, 60%? Is there any kind of established ratios for the different parts of the vision and how that works with the private community?
That is a great question, and I'm going to answer it, and then I'm going to move on, because these are all the discussion questions, but that is fundamental, and the short answer is no. And what was interesting from our perspective working on 3 is we saw projects in 3 different cities where the amount of assistance, subsidy, whatever you want to call it, from the funding, it ranged dramatically depending on the projects. And again, and we'll talk about this in a bit, one rule of thumb could be a 15 to 23%, is often somewhere where you're looking at. Hopefully it's smaller, but on some of these, that's what we were beginning to see. Some don't only need a 5 or 6%. Other ones are going to need more, but the impact, and then we'll measure those, the metrics by which you're leveraging is not always money. I mean, it could be in Oswego, it was the Bridge Street corridor. Again, transportation funding should come from a different source, but so critical to make our other catalytic projects happen, we had to cross Bridge Street. So we kept pushing, saying, we're not getting a private leverage from this, but this is going to leverage significant private development by being able to cross Bridge Street. So they all are going to be different, and we can't give one answer to that, but it's something that everybody should be paying attention to, and actually as the planning committee, that is one of your jobs. As you're vetting all of these, you will be discussing, well, that's at X%, is that right? And I can't answer that, but I can tell you Sarah Woodworth is excellent at answering that question, and and others on the team, and that's why we have, we rely on them. And all that information you get to see, it all goes on the website as well, but you'll have to go through all of these different technical memos looking at the numbers and how they crunch. And our recommendation, is it right, or is it, it seems to us they're asking too much, or maybe they need a little more to make this really work. Again, goal is to make this happen.
Can I violate your rule right at the get-go, and because this is a concern to me. So in reading this, there's a lot of discussion and a lot of sort of generic gut feeling about $10 million in development and economic development. So when I read that vision statement, what screams out to me is housing and jobs. Housing and jobs, housing and jobs. Development around housing and jobs. Now that's fine, but I guess that I still feel unclear about what our vision and mandate is. Speaking to the issue of the vision statement, the goal here, and is there a prioritizing of this? Is it jobs? Is it housing? Is there a hierarchy here? Are we under some mandate by the proposed specifics that were in this application? And it would be helpful at some point, not necessarily right now, for me, and I think other members, to have some clarity here. Like, what are the priorities? And is there, a 1, 2, and 3 to this? Because, some of these things may or may not fit into that mandate.
Well, that's a good question. If you're okay, I'm going to go on, and then we'll come right back to this, because these are all the questions. The prioritization is something that is going to take place based on what, this committee's feedback and then the community's feedback. And again, you mentioned, jobs, economic development, housing. There's also waterfront. And when you go through and look at everything, the waterfront is substantial. The improvements to, again, the streets to get to the waterfront, all of those are big parts of it. What we want to hear and what we will be talking about next week with the community is what is most important to you, the community. And we will hear that. And we're going to come out of next week's meeting, and if it's jobs is 80% of the community is focused on jobs. Yeah, this is a community vision. So that will shape the outcomes of this planning effort.
So that's flexible.
This is flexible. We're going to talk about, this is one of the exercises next week will be, this can completely change. Okay. But your point was great, and and it'll be included. You'll see it next week in one of the slides, because that's just it. Is this close? Does it feel right? And if there's areas that it should be focused on, or if it's missing, is what we need to get to. So it will change, but again, as I said, the goal is going to be to get this right as quickly as we can, because this is a 5-month planning process. This is not a 9-month or a 12-month planning process. So that's why it will be imperative for all of the participation on it. But that's a good question, and we'll work on that. Now let's just get to the Bridge District and to the application and the initiatives. There were a number. In the application, community was asked to prioritize right from the beginning. I'm going to say right on this slide, as I go through, and I'm going to highlight the top 7 priority projects from the application. This is a very important thing for everyone to understand, and will be part of the discussion. The application has been accepted. $10 million has been awarded. Funding has been identified in this application. You're going to see it on the next slide for just a few of the items. I very specifically did not go into great depth on every single part of the application, because this planning process will fully determine what the priority projects are. And without using any example of a project here, I'm again going to go to Oswego just because I can talk about it. I will tell you that some of the projects in the application were great ideas, but they weren't fitting the rule, they weren't doing what the goals of the DRI, the catalytic development to create around it, to connect opportunities. In one example, it was a project that was a very interesting job-creating project that was not connected to anything within the downtown in an easy way. It was a hard part of that to make the determination that that really is a DRI project. And again, it was not something that the community necessarily prioritized in any way. It never came up in the, this is important to us. And that made a very big difference in terms of how the Oswego DRI was finalized. And so again, many of, or good portions of what was in their application were in the priority, made it through, made perfect sense. Others did not. And then, and this is important too, new initiatives were created through the planning process. Probably the #1 project that I would like to see in Oswego was on West 1st, north of Bridge Street. We thought there's a vacant property, and then there was, a really underutilized property. We got those 2 property owners to talk together, and they said, yes, we think we'd like to do something. We had our consultant develop a pro forma. In the middle of her developing that pro forma, the next property owner called us and said, I'm in, and I've got the money to actually make this happen, and he did. And so again, all of a sudden what was smaller became almost a half-block redevelopment, both historic preservation and new development to fit in with the historic elements of West First Street. And that became one of the most exciting projects that actually created an extension of their Main Street environment. And that's an example of what can happen, which is why we are going to follow the application, and they're putting an emphasis on what has gone in. But it does not mean that this is a done game in any way. This is the start, and a lot of work's gone into this, but it will change, and the amounts will change. You know, the Basilica, again, talking about an investment in further redevelopment, and also outdoors, creating the environment around so that, you know, events can occur in the outdoor area and improvements there. You know, again, just these are the numbers, these are the estimates. I only put in very small amounts of information, but again, as the city put this together, you know, they're showing the credentials, how big of a project, how much of a leverage of an ask would it be, and then what are the jobs created. And you know, this is where we're just starting. The warehouse picture is not linked, okay. But again, next to the warehouse, I mean, you've got Digilabs, an expansion, real jobs that are coming in, more, probably than that 7 that I have in there. I gotta figure out what, I put 7 there. And again, in all of the opportunities that are there, that is something that answers quite a bit of what the DRI is looking to do. You know, the Wick Hotel and the connection, you know, coming up, it's now all of a sudden, connections is a word that we use a lot, but, you know, connected places really, you know, become the vibrant, exciting places. You've got strong network and opportunities for stronger connections. And that, you know, to me is something that we found very interesting. Again, we'll begin to look into these. And then the River House Phase 2, you know, creating, you know, real opportunities for work, creative opportunities. I mean, these are real projects that, you know, we're beginning to look at. The transit-oriented design development is what we're talking about here. And again, and this is a project that is very rapidly changing. And I mean, Sheena can announce that we're actively seeking development opportunities for this location. If there's any questions, I'll put Sheena up here because I'm not going to answer them. But it's the fact of the matter is, you know, this is large. I mean, this is a real opportunity with a site that you can talk about a mixed-use development immediately adjacent to transit. You know, these are exciting projects and ideas, and how you develop this, and what's the density, what can the market support, all of those are going to be questions that we need to figure out and figure out fast. But it's a great example of, you know, within the Bridge District, the opportunities that you have. And then again, I'm going to talk, you know, about the public pier project within the park, and again, the whole waterfront with a number of initiatives. You know, this to me is an incredibly important opportunity and destination within the Bridge District. And you know, again, and how you do it, and then what is the leverage, and what is the metrics here? I mean, how do you value such an important community destination? How do you make it work within all of the DRI initiatives? And again, and those, I'm just leaving here, those are the 7 that were the top priorities. There's also the fishing village. There's the idea of, you know, a grocery store, you know, food desert. There's so many other pieces to this. And again, and I should state, you know, you've got, you know, a north side of the Bridge District and a south side of the Bridge District. And, you know, what are those components? What's the walkability? How does it connect to the neighbors? And what are the opportunities for the neighbors who live within the Bridge District and immediately around the Bridge District? And how is it, again, from a social equity standpoint, how is this a benefit to everyone? Visitors who are coming here, but really to the people who live here in I won't say that again, in Hudson, and again, and the people who've, you know, long been here in this region. So, you know, again, you know, we want to emphasize, you know, right now, we're at the very beginning, you know, we need to learn as much as we can, as fast as we can. And, you know, and again, we're going to get into the discussion, you know, very fast. I want to, and I'm watching the clock, you know, just as you look at this slide, you know, these are the components of the plan and what we'll be doing very quickly, you know, developing the vision, a downtown profile, understanding the conditions, et cetera. That's all the work that we begin to do and we'll be presenting to the community and will become part of this. And then again, all of the project list, the prioritization, everything that I mentioned before, the profiles of each and every project. Just again, I want this to lead into the discussion, but understand what we're talking about and what's important from the DRI perspective. What are strong projects? It's the public improvements, the development, rehab. Obviously, historic preservation, I want to hear more about it, but clearly is going to be critical. And then how does development fit within the historic fabric? Grants. How do you create, either revolving funds or, in one with us, Oswego we've done in other cities, you create, you pay off, buy down the interest. So, there's interest-free loans that, owners, homeowners, business owners, et cetera, can use to, really, to use, pay back the money, but without the interest to get things happening sooner. And again, the branding, the marketing. I mean, you have a great brand, but this is going to be a new area. How does that come in and what's the priority level there? And then again, just, again, as we talk about what's not eligible, and this is important to note, for the planning activities going forward, staff costs, training expenses, program expenses, those are elements that we're not going to be looking at. We're not here yet, but understanding how and how these funds are used within the development is important. Public engagement, again, and I'm going to go through this quickly, but I want public engagement to be discussed in the discussion phase. We have 3 meetings set up. Again, within a 5-month time frame. We'll be here almost every month, a little bit less than every month. You're welcome to be in all of these meetings in the community. So again, there's multiple opportunities for the community to be involved, and then online. I say it in all of mine, but we emphasize community engagement because fundamentally projects don't work if the community doesn't support them. That's as simple as that. And I've been in plenty of communities where the ideas were not what the community wanted and nothing happened. So that to me is not a successful planning process in any way. And the only way to do that is to build the consensus to make sure that everybody who's participating sees the words they used and what they voted on, what they thought was most important, reflected in the results of the plan. I mean, again, not everyone's going to win. There's going to be 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 who just have something on their mind that they want, and it may not be financeable or feasible. And that's, I'm just going to say that now, but we'll answer every question when they come up, and we'll explain why, what won't happen. The big thing is we want to make sure that there are opportunities to speak and that what you are saying is heard. I'll put one plug in for my comment page that I've handed out. As I said, if you're here in the room and you're here, I want to get as much input as I can, so please write on that. It will all get recorded and be part of this meeting, of the meeting notes from this. And again, in other ways of engagement, there may be opportunities, and this is for a discussion point, of creating work groups, that could come out of this. If there's real, priority areas, issues, specific things that we want to talk about, there may be other subcommittee working groups to vet those, and we would encourage that. That's something, again, that we want to discuss tonight. And then, again, we will, after this, and we know roughly the community engagement strategy, we're continuing to refine it, how much information, when it gets online, all of that, and the needs. And again, I've gone through this with the surveys online. We like smartphone technology, which is what we'll use likely in these events, because while everyone doesn't have internet at home, almost everyone universally has smartphone technology. And we've just found it to be a better tool than using online surveys. And it's, again, something that we can bring. We have the resources. And then, again, we just talk about, really being involved in the community, speaking to as many stakeholders as we can. We'll have multiple days of stakeholder interviews just so that we can get the information out. I will put in, you'll see a full schedule, but again, this is a fast-moving project. Public meeting is next week, October 26th, 6 p.m., same place, so yeah, and that will be much more of a working meeting with the public. And I've mentioned it, but we're going to be finished by March of 2018 with the plan. So this is going to be fast. It'll be here before we know it, and there's a lot of work that goes into it. This is really for the planning committee, just because I want you to see this. I never really like to put up a tentative set of dates. So all we do know right now is that we're going to be holding interviews next week along with the public meeting that is official. I have put in tentative dates, and especially notice the LPC meeting number 2 on 11/14, LPC meeting number 3 on 12/19, LPC meeting number 4 on 1/23, and then the LPC meeting number 5 on 2/20. From the community's perspective, right now, tentative public meeting number 2 will happen December 7th, and public meeting number 3 will happen on February 8th. You'll be looking at the priority projects and vetting them. And again, they're not in any way the priority projects in December, but we will begin to narrow them down, and we'll need your input on if we're in the right place. By the time we come back in February, based on what your input, planning committee, everyone, now we will be looking and presenting at essentially the priority projects and all of the key elements, the strategies, the goals, the plan. And again, because I probably haven't emphasized it enough, the DRI will be a redevelopment, revitalization plan that has many initiatives and implementation areas. Not everyone will or should be identified as the priority project for the funding. It will be part of this. And that, again, being part of this plan will help it to leverage other funding that may be more appropriate for it. So just want to mention that. And now, we can open it right back up to the discussion. For everyone who's up here, and in the community, you have it as well. But what I would like, and again, this is really beginning to help us all understand, where we each are looking. I do like to talk about the opportunities, what you, from the community's standpoint, the committee, think the opportunities are that we need to immediately be focused on and doing research on. And then, in the second 15 minutes of this conversation, we can talk about issues, barriers that need to be addressed from your perspective, any challenges that we need to understand, and that is just as important because we got to figure those out. But again, I always like, I like the good news before the bad news. It's just who I am. So the opportunities, if you will, I would love to begin to hear them. And again, thanks to Phil for keeping notes on this. Okay.
Thanks, Steve. So for those of you I haven't met, I apologize I was late. I was coming up from New York City and got stuck in traffic. Surprise. So I want to introduce myself, Matthew Nelson. Pleased to be co-chair with the mayor of the committee, and look forward to doing this great work with all of you and the public as well. I just want to take 1 second to talk again about vision, just to sort of table set for the conversation. I think one of the things that really set this application apart, and I was part of the review process as a member of the RADC with Mike and Todd and some other folks. And this application, for me, as an applicant reviewer at the time, really spoke to a great amount of diversity. So it's a very small target area in a small community of 3,500 people or so compared to the other major cities that applied for funding. But this small little target area had so much going for it. And I think, Seth, that it goes beyond housing and jobs. It's arts, it's culture, it's tourism, it's small business development in so many different ways. And I think that we have a lot of great opportunity here to catalyze beyond the obvious, right? Beyond those 2 things that jump out at you, Waterfront, the Basilica, the big sort of big ticket item. So I think there's a lot there, and I think that to the extent that we truly solicit a lot of feedback from the community, and that folks in the community step up and contribute their thoughts about what's going to work to the point of funding. It's $10 million to help catalyze a lot of projects that can then go after other dollars as well, as was spoken to before. So this is going to be, a few seeds, to use your analogy, John. But it's going to be an incubator for a lot of other stuff that's going to come from it. So I'm really looking forward to it, and with that, I hope there's some good opportunity discussion here. So thank you.
Can't all be this quiet. And if you really are, and if you just have to say something that's a challenge.
Steve, can I just ask you to maybe, can you brief us a little bit on what non-monetary incentives the committee can look at to work with the development? When I say non-monetary, I'm talking about land planning, zoning approvals, different things like that, brownfields certifications, ways we can take things that are unusable and make them usable through government participation.
That's a great point, and I probably glossed over it when I was talking about the team. EDR out of Syracuse, they're the ones helping us understanding the zoning, all of the current potential issues with the zoning, and how we might consider changing the zoning here to create more opportunity, to create more of a potential development opportunity because of that constraint. You know, brownfield issues, those are all areas that ultimately become funding, of a different source of funding. I think the one thing with a brownfield project, I think was a great way of looking at a site. I know a brownfield issue, just because I know this from my own personal work, take many, many years to resolve. I've dealt with BOAs in the past, and again, I would only emphasize with something like that, while it would be an important part of the plan, and I think you've got a few brownfields right in the study area that I've already seen, they may be a little bit more difficult, you know, because of the fact of what the environmental, but they then become ones, you gotta get the funding to get the assessments done, to get them into it, and that would then go into the next bit of funding. But that's a good point. Yes, and again, I will say to this, you know, that's an important, you gotta look at other funding or, you know, other ways to create opportunity. Zoning, land use are good examples, but again, and this will be an important conversation, how do you measure, you know, a health impact on a community, you know, with an improved green space, or some of the other ways that, you know, a project can leverage value for a community, and again, in green space. So, you know, we will begin to look at all of this, and they all play a role in the metrics for prioritizing a project. So, and zoning is a great one, because that oftentimes creates ways to immediately get a developer interested, if it fits within what the community is looking for.
No. It wasn't in the 7 priority projects that you mentioned, but you just briefly said that, you know, obviously Hudson's a food desert, or you know, there's food apartheid here, and there's no grocery store in town. It's walkable for the Bridge District. And the Berkshire Taconic Foundation for the past year has been funding a project. There's a Columbia County Food Association and a local Hudson Food Association that Javine is part of, and they've already done a lot of work getting community feedback on, you know, what could be done in Hudson, you know, to address these issues about food access. So it could be just helpful to collaborate with them and see what's come out of that project.
That's great. And is there any actual like locations or any of that that's been...
In terms of projects that they're proposing? Yeah, there's a whole, Javine could probably speak more to it than I can, but there's a lot that's already happening. There's a new fish market, and there are plans for a mobile grocery potentially, and other things that are in the works that...
I'm going to go to Joan, and then I'll bring it right over. That's exactly what we're talking about, and that's, you know, again, finding the connections that create, you know, just extend something to create more opportunity out of it. So that's perfect.
I just think we should be careful about how we throw around the word community, because there are so many different communities in Hudson. I don't claim to represent one community here, and I'm sure people around the table feel the same way. But I would be interested to hear about how other DRIs have authentically engaged different communities in their districts, particularly those that are historically marginalized and left out of conversations like this.
Very good point, and just for my own clarification, when I say community, I am talking about all of Hudson, because that's where I start. You know, in all of our issues, you know, a good example, and I will go back just to Oswego. You know, we've got North Bridge District and South Bridge District, just breaking it by Warren Street. You know, there we had east of the river and west of the river, and all of the opportunities were always from, you know, the folks on the east side, and they weren't wrong in this, were occurring on the west side of Oswego River because the opportunities were already there. There was already a revitalization occurring, the vibrancy of the, you know, West First Street. And so it became a very critical part of this to make sure that the community on the west side was participating and was seeing opportunities that were coming onto their end. And I can tell you that was a tough one, because it was also, and this gets harder, and these are all the conversations we have to have, how do you make those projects still work and connect to, in one of them in particular, it was this great, corner that should have been the perfect retail that just didn't have, the amount of money would be difficult to bring this building back. And it was, but that, they don't, that's their community. So, we were over there in that community. And I would welcome, when we talk about community engagement here and the different communities, how we might engage and go in, and that helps us. We have, stakeholder interviews. Who should I be speaking to, or who on our team, who should Larissa Ortiz be speaking to, or Lori Bowe, or Mark Norman, affordable housing. So, identifying who we need to be in touch with is important, and if it's not part of our team, is there somebody else that we need to bring onto our team to make sure that everyone is being represented and connected to? And that's something that's still, a possibility at this point, so if we need to.
I just want to build on that just for a minute. I mean, one of the roles, and I'm going to sort of flip your question back to you, because one of the primary reasons that we feel it's important to have, here, because it's such a diverse community, we have a large planning committee. We're relying on you all to help engage the community. Tell Stantec, tell us how to reach the community. Where do we go? What do we do? We totally recognize that, we require meetings, public meetings, those are important. That is not the best way to reach certain sectors of the community, to reach everybody. So how do we do that? And we're also relying on you to be ambassadors for the program, to go out and get that feedback and bring it back to the committee. So it's every community. I don't think I've ever worked in a community that's the same as another community. Each one is different, and we recognize that. So it's that's a really important part of this process. We know that there was a very quick community engagement. You did the best you could, and we'll do the best we can here, but it is an ongoing process, and that's very, very important to the DRI, that it's community-based, it responds to the community, and it engages the community.
So can I piggyback on that for a second? I just want to sort of follow up on it, because Jonas, you asked that question, I thought of it in my own head as both sides of this equation. Sure, everyone can hear. Sure. So I thought of it as both sides of the equation, both a challenge, right, which it is, historically, and an opportunity. And the opportunity here, if we're listing them, is to change the dynamic a little bit about how the community is engaged and how to bring people to the table. And to Sarah's point, every one of the people at this table represents a different subsection of this community, right? Whether it's the healthcare sector through Betsy, or the business community with Tony, or the Promise neighborhoods, or whatever sector everybody brings together. We each have to bring that to the table, right? Not just ourselves, but the piece that we represent. So I think we all have to step up to the plate in a short period of time to do that.
Debbie, just because you are, and then we go.
Sure. All right. So Michelle was talking about food accessibility, something that wasn't mentioned in our vision, and I think that's something that's very important for Hudson. So how are we going to increase food accessibility? And one way that the Hudson Core Group, through the Berkshire Taconic Fund, is doing that is through the Seafood Buying Club, which is every other week, and we're in the works of trying to do a mobile market where we drive around Hudson and we have fresh food in a truck. And how can the DRI make it even more possible to do it in a larger scale, where it's easier for people to get food without having to walk to ShopRite or to carpool to a supermarket, where it's easier for them to get simple things like milk and eggs. And how is transportation going to do that? How are we doing that with the DRI?
No, absolutely. And getting it at a price that's affordable too, which just adds to that.
So I'm a little dense here, and I just want to have some better sense of how this works. So we're all sitting here, and you floated out these general parameters, but at some point, then we are supposed to respond to proposals and projects, and so I'm just a little unclear, very open to this process, but a little unclear, how does this work? So is it that you have these interviews with the stakeholders that we help you identify, and then you at some point float up a list Or are we working off of the list that was part of this application? It has to get concrete at some point. And I understand, I can even just see in this, there's an exchange. So you bring forth an idea and then you say, hey, and this is how it works. But I'm just looking for some kind of, you know, practice. We got 6 months or 5 months, and I'm just still a little unclear about how we're doing this. At some point, is there a list? At some point, are we having a meeting where we're going to say, the point of this meeting is we're going to hear 15 ideas that each of us have done our best to vet out, and then we're going to put them on a board, and we're going to start having the consultants evaluate the viability of them. I just want to get a practical sense, is what I'm saying.
Sure, and I think I do that. It's a very good point, and it's, you know, and it is fast. It is 5 months. So at the stage right now, ideas are going to still come. So yeah, we'll take new ideas. We're going to take new ideas from the community next week. That is still very much a part of this. With that said, we have an application that's been worked on. There are a number of projects, and it's online. Everyone has access to it. Our consultants are already going through that, identifying those projects. You know, we are putting in our sense as from the urban design, urban planning, how does it connect all of those criteria, we're developing them. And you know, what we need to do is, you know, figure out which of those projects really make sense from our perspective. We're going to do our homework. We're going to say some of these just, you can't finance it at this way. Or you finance it, it's going to take up 30% of your DRI ask. Is that what you want?
So the idea is this is a starting point.
That's a starting point. It's a very important starting point.
It's a boilerplate, but it's not set in stone.
It's not set in stone. Okay. Very clear, and that's important. And if you have those questions, the community is going to have those questions. So I'm going to start with that next week and say that. Yes, but to the other part of yours, you will be in a room, there will be a list, there will be recommendations on that list, and this whole committee will be making those decisions for the community in the first round, and then we take your input on that priority list, and then it goes to the community for their input on that. And that is how it is going to work. Okay.
I think Seth asked a large majority of my questions, you know, and I'll just add that I'd love to just make the right amount of time to do this so it's not, so we're not feeling just a little bit rushed in the first hour and 15 minutes. That's an awful lot to get through, and I understand we're out of time, but I've got all the time in the world to get this right, and I would like to take the time to really, really understand what it is that we're going to spend this money on and make sure that it gets done correctly. I understand the 5-month, 6-month thing, but is there any room at the end of that? Or, I mean, we locked into that 6 months? Because and also, this is our first meeting. Some of us don't know each other. Most of us have never spoken to one another. And, you know, how do we actually engage with one another? That we engage with one another and have a conversation about all of these things. Because it just seems we better step up our meetings even a little bit more because there's a lot to talk about.
Yep. No, absolutely. And sir, I see you in the background with your hand raised, and you're going to be the very first person as soon as we open it up to the public. So, and it will likely be sooner. I mean, I think, again, you know, we had a lot of time for this, and we can get there.
Guys, the deadline is the deadline. So this will be done, but I promise you, you will get through it, and it's a whirlwind. We did it in the last round. The communities were engaged. It was a lot of work. I'm glad you all are here. Maybe you didn't know what you signed up for, but you're going to be doing this a lot for the next 5 months. But we'll get through it. It's a quick, oh yeah, go ahead.
I mean, 10 communities have done this in 10 other parts of the state. In our particular region, we're already spending money in Glens Falls. They got through it. They sat down as a community. I mean, just the basic parameters. The community submitted an application with concept and a plan. It was reviewed and it was accepted by the regional council to move on to be considered for this process and the $10 million. The rest of that is up to you now, and the process starts now, but it has to happen fast, and the projects have to be done. They have to be able to be financed, underwritten, and completed in a quick time frame. They can't be concepts. This is not going to be a line of credit that's going to sit in the account somewhere until that project hatches. If the project doesn't happen, there's going to be a move on to another project. That's why you're going to have a list of projects that's greater than what you might have available for money. And it's going to be expected to leverage quite a bit of private sector and other public sector.
Sorry, I just want to be clear, I'm ready to move quickly and work as hard as it takes, Mike, and that's not an issue as far as I'm concerned, but I look at that timetable and look at 6 meetings and just, is that enough? Right off the bat.
Well, that's why you could do the you may want to break up into focus groups and meet amongst yourselves or with facilitators, or, you may want to do more than that. And that schedule is something that you all need to,
and I'll put that to the co-chairs too.
There's like 5 or 6 projects already on that list that are ready for CFA funding that could be funded there. So there might be a need to generate a lot of other project ideas. So there's a lot of work to be done and a lot of public input that's going to be needed. This is public input, this is information gathering, it's going to be done with analysis, and that's how you're going to be able to have a list to react to after we have those concepts.
I mean, I'll just add that I think you hit the nail on the head, and we have parameters and a timeline with some identified meetings. But my experience after 7 years on the regional council is it's the meetings between those meetings where you get a lot of work done. And the bottom line is it is up to us around the table, the state staff and the community, to fill those in. And what you said at the end there, Colin, is very important. You're willing, and that's why you're sitting at the table. I think looking left and right, I know a lot of people here are feeling the same way. Tonight's a launching point, but talk about rolling up your sleeves and really getting down to the grind. That's what we're happening. That's what's going to be happening. And what you saw there, I think, are just suggestions. I think it's going to be filled in significantly.
To your point, as we, we'll be here. Myself and team members will be here almost every 2 weeks, which is unheard of on some of these. But you have to if we're going to move at this speed.
What would be helpful, I think, and it probably exists already, I just don't know how to access it, would be maps of available properties in the city that are either city-owned or owned by HDC or managed by HDC, because there might be some wonderful opportunities that could come to mind if we knew exactly where those available properties are. The other thing I wanted to bring up was the participation of outside stakeholders. For instance, the Greenway Trail that I think the governor is quite supportive of is coming through Hudson, so far as I know. CLC, the local land conservancy, has a pretty big investment in North Bay. And I'm wondering to what extent in this process we need to engage them, because they're players in the game. I know Christine's here, right. But I'm just suggesting that, to the extent that they're going to be significant players on our waterfront or in the bridge district, I think we need to give them some airtime.
But the downtown profile assessment is for, some of the things you mentioned. We will have, by next week, we'll have all the maps, land ownership maps, zoning maps, all of that information will be at the public meeting. What we will do for the planning committee is once those are completed, we'll put them all into one PDF. We'll email them out, and then we'll also, Sarah, we can get that up on the website so that anyone wants a copy of that, we can do that, correct? PDF. But they'll also be at the public meeting next week. So.
I have a question. Is there like a central repository of documents of this project? Is that on the website?
Central repository of all the documents will go on the Department of State's website, which I have on the last slide of this. It's a long email address. Easiest way if you're going online is just New York State Department of State, or DRI, is, Department of State DRI, or it comes right up, and then you just hit it. And Department of State has it. For anyone who wants to write down a long address, I have it right on the end.
But I just want to clarify, that website has DRI developed documents on it. So things like if to collect a repository of maybe existing plans and things like that, maybe we can work with the city to do something.
Okay.
Have all that up there, but.
And even what we often like to do, is if we've given a presentation that somebody wants to see, that we can then, post the presentation, so we've got access to it. It's just very helpful.
In that same, getting to the core of we have to have more collaboration here. So practical thing is that on that site, can we have, I know half of you, but I don't know half of you, our names and what our affiliations are, and our telephone numbers and email addresses, because I don't want to look through a long string of emails and try to figure it out. And with that, then there is maybe the possibility that there is an email process to collaborate in between these meetings or form committees. I don't know how to.
And we can email that out probably tomorrow. If you've got a jump drive, I can give it to you tonight, but I have it right on my laptop. But yes, we've pulled that together for this, and absolutely, we'll get all that information out.
To speak to Seth's point, we'll be
situations, I'll talk to the city, the chamber, the CEDC, and I represent the county website. We'll try to use all 5 of those websites to have one part. So no matter what kind of website you pull up, there'll be a part on it that says the Revitalization Committee and project, a link to one central website. So we'll use all of our private and governmental resources to give the public enough access, so no matter what website they stumble onto, whether it be the county, the city, the CEDC, the chamber, some of the other private websites who will volunteer, will make one common link.
Has your experience been, excuse me, in the past that committee structures are helpful for getting a group this large to be more productive?
The question was, in my past, has having subcommittees or a committee structure to get more of this work done, is it productive? Yes, it is. It can also create a lot of scheduling difficulties trying to get people together. So again, it's very helpful. You'll be taking on extra responsibility as a group if you are doing that, but you also can get right directly into it. That allows you to potentially break apart and only review parts of the plan because that's your subcommittee's area, and that can actually be very effective. Again, it's the scheduling within a 5-month time frame and getting results back so it gets incorporated and you're keeping pace. So yes, and we did that. And some of the DRIs did it, other ones did not, and it was very helpful. So that is again a question for the planning committee, and you'll make that decision, and we can support it.
In the cases where you did have it, how were they identified or structured? Was it with projects?
It was economic development. Jamie, I might have you jump up because Oneonta did do it, correct? So why don't you?
Right, so for the city of Oneonta, there were a natural breakup of some of the projects as they move forward, whether it be for the business district or streetscape and landscaping, things along those lines. Other ones, economic development. And so the group naturally focused in on those areas that they could relate to. So maybe if you're more focused on land conservation, you're not going to focus in on economic development. But somebody who's a small business owner says, I can focus in on facade improvements. There's a natural breakup in the types of projects that we're looking at as we move forward. And so as a committee, it's kind of an organic process. It's a quick organic process, but it is organic nonetheless. And so you will start to focus in on those areas that you can directly relate to, either that you're interested in or in the group that you represent. And so as the conversation moves forward, you can start to see a natural breaking up of the projects that we see or strategies as we move forward, ideas. And so you'll say, hey, I want to focus in on defining that. What does a Main Street business district mean to us? And you start to elaborate on that.
I'm just a little confused on some of these new ideas that are popping up. Now, if you look at the map in the Bridge District, is that a lockbox? That's where the money's got to go. I mean, we're bringing, like Peter wants to identify other properties in the city that could be feasible, but I don't believe that's in the DIR. So we have to stay focused what's in the Bridge District. And what, is there wiggle room to seed something else, or is it all just in the Bridge District?
I'm looking at Sarah, but in the past, I mean, there were some projects that were identified, but there is a focus on the boundary that you've created.
I mean, this is the boundary that was, this is the boundary that was submitted, so that's the sort of initial assumption is that's where we're starting. There is a little bit of wiggle room. If the committee looks at this boundary and feels that really it should be slightly different, that's something that can happen. Remember that the idea is to focus the money on a small enough area that it really has an impact. But there is some wiggle room. But that if there's a decision to sort of look beyond those boundaries, you should probably, as a committee, look at that very quickly.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. If everyone can, take this home, take a look at it. What we'll do too is create so that the planning committee can email and speak to email each other, and we'll create that as your first job to make sure there are no issues with the boundary. Because it would be nice to have that clarified by next week when we're meeting with the community.
Well, it seems to me that's counterintuitive when you look at the strength of our application was the compact nature of our boundaries. So if we're now exploring an X that's not even considered, then aren't we fundamentally weakening our application?
Well, to Sarah's point, we want to keep it compact, so I wouldn't imagine any significant changes, but if there was something that might have just been that we could, with a tweak or two, capture a potential project or an opportunity, I would say maybe just making it up, but a city-owned parcel that was a clear development opportunity that should be brought in. I mean, that would be something that you might want to identify. But again, like I said, it would have to be done quickly, and the goal is, concise, and there are a lot of opportunities within the Bridge District, a lot of opportunities right now.
Steve, real quick. And also keep in mind that the project area will have benefits that go well beyond the defined project boundaries. And so whether it be a streetscape program or whether or not it be a facade program that focuses on a particular area, there will be economic developments that will spill over, especially if you're looking at connectivity, so to say, between one area of the city and the Bridge District. And so if you're looking at a citywide program, say whether it be you're developing a marketing program, there's obviously going to be bonuses and benefits that go well beyond the bid on the Bridge District. So don't think that the benefits will just be for this particular area. Projects may focus in on, however, benefits will definitely spill over.
My question was, we are going, obviously, to have to be dealing with things that could potentially impact Amtrak, the owner of an industrial dock, there's a club along the waterfront. How do you all help us with those kinds of synergies so that we can work with these larger organizations? Are the consultants taking that on? How does that work?
It's a great question, and again, when we use the term stakeholders, it's those who either have a real understanding of an area, can help us learn what the issues, opportunities are. It's also entities like the working dock and the jaws, traffic, trucks. We need to speak to everyone, and those will speak to the owners, get in touch with the owners, understand what's important to them, what they need. It's all, we need to understand all of those aspects of it, which is why we set up a number of days to meet with as many of these individuals as possible. Any large-scale property owner, business owner, they have already been identified. We've already built a list. We will take additional names and we'll expand that list and as they are identified. But we will be in touch with all of them. And again, those are all the realities. I can't give an answer, and I can also say you don't always end up with an answer, but they will all be addressed. That's important to us.
Can you share that list with us?
Absolutely. And it's not finished yet.
So we started this conversation talking about opportunities and challenges, right? So I'm keeping a little bit of a list here. You're welcome. So one of the things that I hear as a repetitive theme that sort of sits in the front of my mind as I think about the conversation we've had is using this process to focus on the Bridge District, but not at the sacrifice of the rest of the city and the surrounding community, and using this process to help expand beyond the bridge, right? And think about those development sites that might exist that are owned by the city, or other development opportunities where we might be able to bring developers in through this process to help grow other parts of the city. To keep a list of what we would call CFA-ready projects, right? Things that wouldn't qualify for the $10 million in the Bridge District, but they came to the table, they came out of this process, we're working with the folks behind them to help put together solid applications for the CFA, for that annual round of funding that's available, or other state grant programs that exist outside of the CFA. It's not the be-all and end-all, right? There's a lot of opportunity there. So the thing I want to make sure we're consistently doing throughout this process is tracking, and we'll use your help to do this, but I'm going to try and help shepherd this too, to expand beyond, whether it's bringing new people in, changing the dynamics of the conversation, that sort of thing. Just thinking about expansion beyond the bridge is, I think, critical to our success.
No, that's great. And again, a strong local planning committee is going to make all the difference, both in the planning process and the identification, and in actually getting these to go forward. As was pointed out, we got to make sure that the projects that come in can be built. And again, it's not just projects, but programs, et cetera, all of the different components.
I think it's great that there's a focus on job creation, and I'm wondering, there were numbers that were associated, numbers of jobs to be created associated with these 7 priority projects that you presented, and I'm wondering, is your team of consultants going to help determine, can we really create that many jobs with these projects? Do you have ways to, help us look at that and analyze? And also, I'm wondering if job training and can be part of that, because, there are a lot of people, I don't have the numbers, but in Hudson who are unemployed, underemployed, who, might not be ready to go into one of those jobs, but it's really important that, we just don't forget about those people and leave them behind.
I think it's an important question, and yes, all opportunities we'll be looking at right away in the programs that are occurring. I keep in mind what can be funded by the DRI and what can't be funded by the DRI, eligible, not eligible. But take an example of if we're looking at a mixed-use development, might it make sense for part of the first floor space to be used for workforce training as a way to begin to activate a first floor in a situation where potentially you don't want as much retail, or so different ways. So all of these ideas are important in how we might make them work and come into it. And again, part of it are important. I'm going to make one comment. The community has been great. We've been speaking for more than a half an hour. We're still ahead of schedule, which I thought we would be tonight. But a couple more minutes, and then I want to open up to 15 minutes of the community, and then a closing with next steps. But I want to make sure if there's any other, from the committee, any input. Anyone else want to speak? Mayor?
I'd like to work through our meeting schedule if we could.
You would like to? Okay, perfect.
And something that Co-Chair Matthew Nelson and I were discussing is our point about creating focus groups or subcommittees. We would like to create 5 different subcommittees. We'd like to create 5 different subcommittees. One would be accessibility and transportation, green spaces, job creation, food accessibility, and infrastructure. And then we'll also be handling communication and outreach. But if there is anyone on the committee that would like to assist, there's going to be an awful lot involved in that, and the more bandwidth, the better there. So just think about those 5 areas of focus. If there's something that we need to focus on beyond that, please let me know.
Yeah, can you on some centralized web identify, it would be helpful to have these meetings because I couldn't write it down fast enough, and then in this email cross-section, identify those committees so that people can think about it, understand what it is, and then...
Yeah, we'll do a follow-up email. We'll send it out tomorrow with the meeting schedule as we decide on it tonight in this list. I heard Michelle ask to repeat the list, and we can do that, but we'll also send it out. And then everybody can chew on it for a little while, the idea being that if 3 or 4 or 5 people want to band together to work on these little individual subcommittees, they can meet by phone or in person, intervening the standard LPC meeting schedule, and then perhaps come to the table, deliver a report from that subcommittee to help keep us focused and on task and sort of drive those things forward through those focus areas.
But what about as a larger group?
I'm sorry?
As a larger group more frequently?
So what do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4 meetings?
I've got for you 5 meetings. I roughly created it about once a month for the planning committee to come together. They are typically, if the planning committee is meeting, then there's typically going to be a public event 2 weeks after that. And going forward, this first one is tight because we're kicking it off for everyone together. We want the community to be involved right with the planning committee at the very same time. But then roughly it'll be the planning committee meets, then the public meets, then the planning committee meets, then the public meets. Then we start, at the end, the planning committee really has to help us refine a plan document that's been fully vetted. So you meet again. And again, I will leave it, it becomes up to the committee if you want to meet more often. I think with the subcommittees, you'll be having a lot of meetings. In the first round, this was the same amount of meetings we held, and it worked. So again, those can be decisions made, but this is the plan that we have in place right now.
I'd like to add something too. One of the things that I didn't talk about in my subcommittee list, which again is accessibility and transportation, green spaces, job creation, food accessibility and infrastructure. There's a housing component too that is being addressed by a separate task force. So I'm forming a housing task force. I have a handful of people so far that are interested. If anyone in this room is interested in serving on a housing task force, please reach out to me. The goal is to have the task force work with the city and with the data that's being provided by the county in a housing study that was recently completed to better understand what our housing needs are and how they will be addressed, and having that planning process run in parallel with this planning process, so we make sure that nothing falls through the cracks, because one will potentially be leveraging the other. So.
Well, it all leads back to that housing piece again, as I mentioned. But if questions or parts come up, and that's how we align this, because we have some resources in our team that would certainly be involved and can facilitate and help with that and bring them together.
Just back to the housekeeping for a minute of the meetings. I think it's this is the way. I mean, we have recommended a meeting a month. It just tends to work. We don't want to ask for more than, I mean, we know you all volunteer, so on the state side, when we put together guidance for this program, we say, once a month makes sense. If you all want to meet more than that, if you want to meet every 2 weeks and have the public, have public events, the public is always invited, that's a rule. You can't have a committee meeting without having the public invited. But other than that, it's, you make the schedule. We also do need, and Steve's team will coordinate this, but we need a public engagement plan, and that's something also to think about. It's great that you all are as I said, we're going to be depending on you to do it, but we need to carry out a lot of these things and to reach out, but we need to put something together so that we have something quickly in writing. We know how we're going to be supporting you in reaching the community. So that's something that I think Steve's going to have to work on with you all, maybe ideas tonight, maybe by email later, but before the first public meeting. But as far as the schedule goes, it's up to you guys. If you want to meet every week, you'll be tired, but that would be, do what you need to do. Set the schedule that works for you.
And Sarah, just because you did mention it.
I know we can't, but remember that the consultant does have, we can, I'm sorry, Steve's probably freaking out.
I can't come every week, I'm just telling you. You can't afford that.
Right, we probably can't, we do want to think about the resources, and so if, if the consultant has limited resources and we want to use those for doing the really technical stuff. But if you want to meet, you can.
I need Steve for every meeting. We have to have a public meeting every time, and Steve doesn't have to be here. So if we wanted to have a meeting just to talk about public engagement, for example, not everything else, but just an hour on that, we could do that without Steve and report back to him on that.
Why not? Yeah. We can try to, we can get someone from the state to come to help facilitate that, if that would be helpful.
Okay.
Just do keep us in the loop. Let us know your meeting.
And what's the deadline for the public engagement plan that you receive from us?
Well, it would be, because we're on a very accelerated timeline, it would be good to have something, a draft.
And we probably have models that we can send.
That's don't say next week, Sarah.
One other.
I know you were.
I would say that you want at least something in place at your public meeting so that you can speak to, and maybe you get more ideas at that meeting. Maybe you collect input at that meeting.
We'll have some input. One more housekeeping item, the code of ethics.
Oh, right. We also have, because this is a committee with a lot of interest, a lot of, the investment in the community, we are going to ask everybody on the committee to review and agree to a code of conduct that it just outlines, the fact that you're operating in the public interest, that you are not going to be, that you'll recuse yourself in any substantive discussion, or if there's voting on projects that you may benefit personally from, very standard ethical guidelines that we're going to ask you, and we don't have it here, so we'll circulate that code of conduct, and we will just ask you all to sign it.
So can I make a recommendation then for, I'm going to get ahead of my co-chair here in doing so, but if we have to have some sort of a public engagement framework before our meeting next week, is there anybody on the committee that's willing to volunteer to be part of a call between now and, let's say, Tuesday or Wednesday of next week to talk about the way we can engage the public and bring your ideas to the table?
And I'll be part of that call too. So.
Okay. So, Jeff, Betsy. Mayor, you are automatic. You don't have to raise your hand. Randall. Okay. And Colin. Okay, good. I think that's a good cross-section. Oh, sorry. We got Michael and Christine. Okay, great.
Elena.
Oh, Elena. Okay, great. Everybody's going to be on. I mean, we'll send it around to anybody that wants to be on, but we'll definitely make sure that that those folks.
And I can, establish a calling line and all that. So if necessary.
All right. So why don't we plan for that maybe Tuesday of next week, just as a target date for now, Monday or Tuesday, so we don't get too far into the week. That way you'll have some sense of how we're going to lay that out for Thursday.
Yep, and then it could be as simple on the Thursday one, as long as we're close, we'll just present, the highlights of what it is so that we've got it, so the community knows.
Yeah.
And then it's, the community can have input.
And I don't know how many people are going to be here next Thursday from the planning committee. Hopefully everybody can be. But maybe we come out of that meeting with a conversation about the subcommittees and sort of get a sense of what the community input is at that point. Maybe narrow our focus on what the subcommittees are and how often we may need to meet to do that. Does that seem reasonable?
I think that does.
Just a question. It says public kickoff event 10:25, but Thursday is the 26th.
Correct.
I just want to make sure because I have to be
10:26. 10:26.
That's like
19 day too.
Yeah.
So it's 26, right?
I just want to make sure.
I'm off by okay. That's what I accounted for. I just had the wrong dates. Okay. Yes.
Could you just give us a tiny overview of what the public meeting is going to look like?
Sure.
Projects going to be around the room?
No, we'll have some. The projects, kind of the overview of them. We will have a number of just, as you talk about the profile, the assessment, just the maps. The core two real things I want to get out of the meeting with the community, I want their input on the vision so that we can quickly clarify and confirm the vision, so that'll be done. And then we will have working maps at each of the tables. And it is a way for us to figure out what are the most important areas within this location, what does the community value, and those dots are not going to stay within these areas. But what I want to do is have every group of community members, hopefully who have not met each other, we try to keep everyone sitting with different people. I want everybody to come up with their priorities for this area, and I want each table will then say them. And I keep them short, and there's a reason for that. There'll be 5 priorities. And I want each table to work together to come up with what they agree on are the 5 most important things. And by the time everybody goes around and we hear them, we are going to come up with a list of about 10 of the most important. It's not a project. I mean, it could be, but likely it'll be, this is what's most important to us. This is what's going to, we want to see happen. And that develops, that's the first thing that will establish the goals based on what the community's, and it's not top 10, but they're the community's highest priorities. That is what we want to get out of that meeting. That'll be a successful meeting, and then we can just very quickly, again, take that against the projects that are in there, and that, those priorities may potentially identify new opportunities. All of that happens.
There are new project ideas or including the ones that are in the application?
We're going to talk about what's in the application, much like I did tonight. I don't want to get too much into all of the details. We want to hear what's really, from the community's perspective, what's most important to them. And that will help us shape, what we should be focusing on. And we like to do it that way because it's a way to really hear from the community. And then they need to then, when they come back on their next meeting, as a community, they need to see how their input shaped from where the application was, what they said was important to them, and what's now becoming likely higher priorities. And you're going to be the last one, only because the community gets 15 minutes.
This is, I think, a practical question. So working backwards, we have to have this plan in place by March. So there's a drafting and a finalization of that plan.
Yes.
And then there are these first phases of developing goals, priorities, and specific projects. Now, that team of consultants and the group there who are analyzing the viability and the strength and the ranking of leveraging, is that something that's happening alongside this, or is the timetable that we go through a process and then we need to hand off this list, and you need time to evaluate that before the plan, because that takes the 5 months down to something less than 5 months.
Yeah, no, and again, if you look at the structure, and there's the guidelines that we can also include just so the committee, and again, a public document, it's all going to be working, all of us together in tandem, but we do, and this is important, by December, so we're talking just a matter of months, couple months, we are going to be getting very close to what are, likely the higher priority projects, because we're coming back in January so the community can see those. And then we have to really, so it'll constantly, and believe me, I can promise you, even in the last couple of weeks, we're going to be, figuring out numbers and whether or not something really can work and all of that before we end. So with that, I want to get to the community because we actually have a hard close. Doors get locked at 8 o'clock, I was told. So that allows me, I have about 2 more minutes in the presentation that I'll end with, but I want to give the community 15 minutes. I know exactly where I'm going to start. I'll just ask that you say your name before you make a comment, and so that we can kind of get to know each other. And I will walk around, and here we go. Thank you for being so patient.
Thank you, William Hughes. So my comment is, and I want to stick to the opportunity theme. There's going to be a lot of opportunities with the DRI. Excuse me. So what I want to, because we're early on in the stage, and this gives you guys an opportunity to think about this, because I know this has been important when the governor has been doing projects moving forward, is women and minority-owned diversity. So are you guys going to offer opportunity for firms, or make an effort to reach out to firms that are more diverse when it comes to giving out contracts? And secondly, once you start developing projects, is there going to be an effort made to include minority and women-owned business?
Good question. What I'll say with the fact that even on our own team right now in the planning part, we have, I should have mentioned, but both women minority businesses make up a major component of our team. I would imagine, without speaking for any of the state entities, but knowing my history working for New York State, that will be critical parts of projects going forward and with the funding that comes with it. So I think the answer is absolutely. A woman raised her hand over here earlier. Just want to make sure. Okay. And then we'll come back, I promise.
Just wanted to ask, Don Moore, I just wanted to ask the mayor if she would elaborate on that list and the purpose of the list that she gave, because it wasn't clear since you didn't have the microphone earlier. If you could just go back over what that was for.
And what the items are.
When you say the list, are you?
Well, there seemed to be a list of areas
of areas of focus for the subcommittees. Right. Yes. So I will bring this right back.
Thanks. So since there will be so much work that will happen between meetings, we're going to break down into subcommittees, and these subcommittees are based on projects that we've already identified in our DRI application. If there are other areas that we should be focusing on beyond these 5, again, accessibility and transportation, green spaces, job creation, food accessibility, and infrastructure, let me know. I know housing is something that's on everyone's mind that's going to be handled in a separate task force in a process that will happen, a planning process that will happen in parallel with this process. So that's the intent of those 5 committees, is to do a lot of work in between these public sessions.
Thank you.
I'm not in Parliament. There's 2 things I observed. One, when I look at the map, it appears like people.
Can you put the mic?
Mark? Closer?
Yeah.
Oh. It seems that we've divided the second ward. We stopped at 2nd Street instead of 3rd Street, and that's the group, the constituency that's underrepresented here. That's 1. 2, we keep talking about interconnecting by way of the internet. And this is the results of just internet communication. There's no people of color in this audience. So I think we've got to find a mechanism so we can reach out to people of color and get their opinions.
I think that's great. And I will actually, in addition to, if you can reach out, to the planning committee as well to help us understand how to make sure going forward. I'll take this opportunity to say, we've developed a flyer that, if everyone can email it to everyone, any listservs you have, we'll get that out so that we can spread the word. That is a very good point. The question about splitting the ward and why we stopped at 2nd Street is a question that, Sheena, would you have an answer, or is it I don't know, that's, we come on after, but I don't know why, and it's a good question, and there just may be a reason, or it may be, again, keep in mind, it's not about the ward, it's about creating a condensed area that they were focusing on.
No great answer, except to say that we were trying to follow the rules and create a compact, dense area that represented a cross-section of the community that we could address any physical, social, workforce challenges and try to bring everyone together. So I don't know if that's necessarily, as opposed to, 3rd Street, maybe move it up to 3rd Street, which is something maybe the LPC could consider, because as we look at the city and 3rd Street coming into town as a natural corridor for entry into the city, as well as it being a corridor for commerce, at least as it's emerging currently with our smaller shops and bodegas along that street as it versus the city, it might be something for the LPC to consider, moving that line back, again, with respect to our process and understanding that the state doesn't necessarily want us to change too much. Moving the street one back in the parallel would not, I don't think, be a huge leap for us. So maybe it's something we can consider.
Good. It's great feedback. Anyone else from the community? I know I have to go through next steps, so, and maybe I'll do that, but if anyone does want to raise their hand, like I said, as long as we're all out of here just after 8 o'clock, we'll be good. This is fairly, okay, here we go.
Hi, I'm just curious Rebecca Wolf. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about, the branding and the marketing, and what role that has to play in the process and the revitalization plan for the city.
That was a very good question that I probably don't have a good answer for. The branding in when we worked on the previous ones was more of a focus and more of an effort was put around that. That is something that I will put in as a question into the community meeting next week, because you have whole specialists that help come up with a brand. Does this district want a distinct brand from downtown, or is it something that's coming along? Those are some questions, I will put it in, because it's an eligible area of the DRI. It was discussed, but maybe not as much emphasized, so it's a good question.
I guess what really confuses me about it is that you brand something when you're trying to sell it. So I'm not really clear why you would be branding a neighborhood.
A good example of a brand that I did recently was the Dayton Mall. I did Dayton Mall Area Master Plan in Dayton, Ohio. It's actually, the mall was 9 miles away from Dayton, and it wasn't even in Dayton. And they needed to create a district. It became the Miami Crossing District. And it was a new brand to help people understand what this place was, and that there were more opportunities. And this was a mall, very different. But so when we talk about branding, potentially creating a district for the Bridge District that helps it become, identified by other people as a place, as a destination. And so that's what we're talking about branding, not in terms of selling. Selling it in terms of how, people coming to visit it, and recognizing that they're coming into a place through signage, through other components at the gateways of this area. And again, it's an eligible way of doing it. We did a branding on Oswego. They talked about having similar signs on all the different stores, so that they could really create a cohesive branded area through a type of sign, even though the store was different. They had an issue with just signs in every which way, and it was cluttered. And so they were helping you through a branding campaign doing that. So that's what we're talking about in terms of the branding. But I think it's a good point. It's a good conversation to have, and how the community sees this Bridge District or this location. It doesn't need to be branded. So everyone, please come next week. Think about that as well. I think it's a very good question, and that's kind of what comes up. And sign-in sheets. They've been going around. If you haven't signed in, please just sign in so we know. And it's particularly important with so many people here that we know how many people have actually come. That's just incredible. Do you have a question or no? Okay. So let me just quickly, going back to the committee in the next few minutes, just want to talk about really next steps. Again, we've already discussed the public engagement plan. We've already discussed the upcoming meetings. Again, the vision, goals, all of that is coming. but that is, will be coming and we're working on fairly quickly. And I've already done public comment, and we are actually finished. I would like to say thank you to everyone. This was great, a great start. I will leave it to the mayor. Do you have any final words or not? So thank you all for coming. I will only emphasize that this is going to be a fast and furious process, but it's an exciting one. So thank you.